Blake Corum with the lane. Blake Corum breaks it back. Blake Corum sprinting. Blake the Great. Touchdown, Michigan. 61 yards.
Everybody, welcome in to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. And this Tuesday, the 17th, as we get ready to get things underway. Thanks for joining us here. We're live weekdays at 1 o'clock, talking about the latest in Michigan sports. That voice you heard, you probably knew that it was Gus Johnson calling a Blake Corum touchdown, Blake the Great, against Penn State this year. And, well, if you're thinking, is that just a coincidence? It's not. Things are rarely a coincidence. And we are going to be talking about Penn State today, Michigan and Penn State, the rivalry, the coaching matchup. Penn State had their spring game. We'll have some video from Happy Valley from this past week. Also today, ESPN came out with their annual ratings football percentage index. And according to that index, ESPN loves themselves some Ohio State, and they hate Michigan. Oh, we'll go through ESPN's FBI and why they are BFF so much with the Buckeyes. And, you know, they don't like the Maize and Blue. We'll sift through that. Also, Michigan adds a signal caller for next year. We will go to that right after we get to this breaking news. There it is. Now, you might think this is bad news. You might think this is good news. I'm going to have to think this one over because it just happened. The Papa Kante, who was along with George Washington III, two freshmen that Michigan signed, Juwan Howard, for this upcoming basketball season. And there had been some speculation about the Papa not being involved with Michigan. And then today we see the news that Papa Kante has requested a release from his national letter of intent. Is that good or bad news? Well, I guess it depends on what kind of player the Papa was going to be. If he was going to come in and contribute, and he was going to be somebody that was a player, ended up being a starter, that's going to be bad news. But considering where Michigan's at and how many players are out there, and they're linked to a few, including one of their former big men and Hunter Dickinson. And as you know, over the last, week or so, there's all this like, oh yeah, there's this guy, there's that guy, there's this guy, there's that guy, but they didn't have a scholarship. Now they do. They have a scholarship. So those players that we have been talking about from Tennessee, from Florida State, from a few other places, and then also from Hunter Dickinson, the possibility now is that they can go out and land one of those guys. I am going to say this is good news. Good news, and that was the Papa going to come in and be an immediate contributor to this team next year. I don't think he was going to be all of that. I think it was going to take a little while for Kante to get things going. It might take a year before he was going to be a presence. He seemed pretty decent on defense, coming along. Really nothing against the guy. I don't know, say it's rare, but I didn't think he was going to come in and be a big time force. Meanwhile, some of the players, like the guy from Tennessee and the guy from Florida State and Hunter Dickinson, I mean, these guys could come in. And in a couple of their cases, I mean, these guys could be all Big Ten performers. These guys could be, potentially all American. So I'm going to say the bigger impact is having the scholarship. We'll see who they end up getting and how that works out. But I'm going to say this is good news for Michigan. Well, what else are we talking about? I'll tell you in just we'll get to the recruit that Michigan's adding. I wanted to tell you that if you did not know, We're a part of rivals.com, the Maize and Blue Review. And I would like you to join up today and get involved on the posting board, on the community, talking about Michigan all day and all night, knowing about the latest in recruiting on basketball and football, and knowing about what's going on, the inside scoop, the football team, and what's going on with Juwan Howard with his team on the hardwood. You know all of that. Go to michigans.rivals.com. That's what you should be doing. All right, so Michigan has added a quarterback, a preferred walk-on, Jack Grusser. He decommitted from Harvard, and he is committed to Michigan. And so I've got a picture of the young man. He is standing with a plaque that says committed to the leaders and best. That is the maize and blue. I've got a picture also. I'm going to assume that that's going to be his dad. He is in Jim Harbaugh's office with a picture of the coach, and he is in. Now, does this mean that he's going to be under center? No, it does not mean that. It means that there's some competition coming up. You can never have too many signal callers. And tomorrow we'll be joined by former Wolverine Jim Scarcelli. Scarcelli texted me this morning, and he was looking at the tape of this kid, Grusser, and he said he really likes what he's seen on the tape. And he said, do you think people will want to see Grusser and some of the video if I break it down tomorrow? And I said, yes, absolutely. So we'll take a look at Grusser, and I think it's good. You know, you're a Michigan fan. You see Jaden Davis tape. You see the guys, 5 stars. You see, the top 100 players, and you look at the tape, and you're like, yeah, that guy looks pretty good. Now you're going to look at a guy that's coming in as a preferred walk-on, and you can kind of weigh and compare. I'm looking forward to that aspect of it because I do watch tape, but mostly when I'm putting the tape on, it's like, oh, this guy's going to commit to Michigan. This is like with Papa Kante, for instance. I put his video on for the first time, and I know that this guy's a 4-star, and that at the time they committed to Michigan, and so you know that he's highly thought of. Now, what jumped out, what I recall watching Kante for the first time, he was going against Kyle Filipowski, who I didn't know was as I was watching it was like the number 1 player in the country, certainly a 5-star, and was heading to Duke. And so like a minute in, I'm like, oh, who's this big white kid that's swatting everything all over the place and dunking on everybody, and made Papa Kante look like he was like 5'6". And, they quickly realized, this is some top recruit. It wasn't a surprise. I mean, it doesn't take like a former player or a scout or something to watch somebody like Filipowski. I was about 2 minutes in and about 3 highlights, and I'm like, wait a second, this guy is a monster. And so it'll be fun to look through and see what Scar has to say about this preferred walk-on that's coming in. And as you probably know, Michigan's last national championship, a preferred walk-on was the quarterback, Brian Greasy. So there you go. Let's, as always, we take your feedback to see where you're at. And coming up, we'll get to some of that spring game from Penn State, and also that FPI from ESPN. Vince with a suggestion: you should have a countdown to the season ticker up on your videos. How's that done, Vince? Like, how many days, there's 100 some odd days or whatever on my videos every time. Where would I put that? Right up on the countdown to the season. Yeah, I get that. Countdown to the football season. I could probably do something like that, the countdown to the football season. Thanks. I'll take that under advisement. Vince, appreciate it. The suggestion for sure. Vince, why don't you go ahead and tell me how far we are out from the season? What is it? September the 2nd. So We're getting to May, June, July, August. So 4 months we have, and 4 months, and we're talking about 12 days, 13, 14, 12, 4 months, 4 into 16, 7, 18 weeks. I mean, we break it all down in different ways. Let's go. Detroit Sports Talk. He's not here a lot, but I got your back when no one else is here. Thumbs up. You are one of my favorites. That's why you always bring your opinions, and it's not that you go against me, but you're not afraid to state your opinion if you don't think it's the popular one out there from Michigan fans. You're not just a crowd pleaser. I mean, you're coming in and you're ready to go when it comes down, like Jason, who is also one of my favorites. And Jason says, Juwan loses another center, shaking my head. The only way to right this ship is for Hunter to come back. Very bizarre that a head coach who played that position with many greats can't keep kids at that position. Yeah, there is that spot. There is that negative part. It was that part, like I thought, Jason, with losing Hunter Dickinson, and most people were like, "Good for Hunter." The team isn't any good. He's a free agent. He can make more money. Go ahead and do it. Well, that was good, well and good for Hunter, but it didn't reflect well on the Michigan basketball program or Juwan Howard. You lose your big man and your best player, and Juwan and big man, that's supposed to be going together like peanut butter and jelly. So yeah, that wasn't a good look. And so this part as well. It just so happens though, Jason, that the kid from Tennessee, he's a low post player. Cleveland, I know he just seems like he's a jack of all trades, but he's obviously Dickinson is a big. So they're looking for a big man, a 4 or a 5. The game's positionless now. Let's be honest. So Cleveland. I'd have to look in to see. I don't know what exactly his true position is. Cleveland from Florida State, who I know Michigan, along with 10 other teams, are in there, and it could be a surprise. Detroit Sports Talk thinks Michigan still needs to get better skill players. Well, let's break that down specifically. You're talking about football. Do I think Michigan needs to get better running backs? No, I think they've got the best running backs, as good as anybody in the country. Do I think that they need to get better quarterbacks? Well, JJ's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and they just got Jaden Davis. Is a tight end a skill position? They're good at tight end, if we wanted to include that. So we're talking about wide receivers. You think Michigan needs to get better wide receivers, and they've got 3 of them coming in this year. They did pretty well that way with Carmelo, English, and Samaj Morgan right here from in-state, and the kid from St. Louis who stood out in the spring game, Frederick Moore. Who's to say that those guys, I hear what you're saying. Overall, you go back and it's going to be one of these things when we get to FPI with ESPN. FBI, just like a lot of people, they love recruiting. And if you're knocking them down annually in recruiting, like Georgia, all of those years, 5-star, 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 at some point, if you get the coaching, you're able to put that together, and then you play those teams with the coaching and the 5-stars, and you're like, you can't compete with these guys. These guys just have too much talent all over the field. Meanwhile, I think Michigan has closed that gap, and the way things are headed with the transfer portal, the way they're knocking it out the park, the way they did, the way they're utilizing the name, image, and likeness, that I think Michigan, talent-wise, they're going to be on par, skill position anywhere. Like in previous years, Blake Corum was gone. So was Keegan. So was Zinter. You could probably add another 2-3 guys that were probably, getting ready for the NFL draft a week from Thursday. Meanwhile, Michigan was able to keep all those guys. So just this year right now, Michigan's they're in as good a spot as anybody in the country. Anybody. And, now we're talking about 24. Oh, yeah, they're doing pretty good recruiting in 24 right now, too. So Michigan, as we sit here right now, yeah, well, you can always, do a little bit better. You get couple more 5 stars, sprinkle in a little bit. They got it going right now. There's a lot of levers that you need to have all in position to be able to beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten, go to the college football playoff, and think about doing that all the time. Right now, the formula that Michigan has is working, and it's as good. I'm not complaining. We're just pointing out, like, hey, let's, Michigan now has the Ferrari, and we are just opening up the hood and, fine tuning a little bit over there, bending that fender a little bit. We're just looking at aerodynamics of the tires now. They've got it, and they've got the driver. The things are going pretty good. JP doesn't want to be a Debbie Downer, but come on. Something is happening behind the curtains that makes me believe these kids think Juwan doesn't or can't develop them accordingly. Or, Jason, Michigan didn't make the tournament, and their prospects of making the tournament next year aren't so hot. That could be one thing. That could be a factor. I don't know exactly what it is for Papa. 2, Papa might be having some issues with his schoolwork, where that was going to be an issue of him being able to come in and be able to play. It could be that. It could also be a weird 3 for me to be. It could also be when it comes to Papa. Sure enough, he's a big man and everything else, and Michigan's doing pretty good with name, image, and likeness and everything else. But as we know, Michigan is not promising a Papa Kante thousands of dollars to come on in. Maybe Syracuse. Now that, Jim Boeheim is gone and they need to fill up that Carrier Dome and everything else, they got some people and they're saying, let's put together a package and let's promise Papa Kante $100,000 to come to Syracuse, New York to play for the Orange. Maybe they've done that. So it could be upfront money with the NIL. It could be academics, or it could be with Michigan's prospects out on the floor. Now, that third one does have everything to do with Juwan Howard, or, a lot to do with Juwan Howard. And it's one part where football has the advantage. If you're laying out the name, image, and likeness, say, hey, you come in and, look what the players can do. You point out Colston Loveland, who came in and, he's driving a $90,000 car. Who knows how much else he's getting from name, image, and likeness. He's probably over 6 figures now and what he's able to make. Kante, somebody's telling him, hey, you can have 100,000 right now. You don't have to wait till this time next year. You want 100,000 down the road? You want 100,000? So it could be a couple things. So it's okay about being a Debbie Downer. When you miss the tournament is pass or fail. We know where Michigan's at right now. It's not just an off season of, oh, okay, everything's going great with the maize and blue on the hardwood. No, they missed the tournament. Juwan Howard has another year this year like he did last year. And then the people that are jumping up talking about, we need to move on, it's going to get a lot louder and it's going to get a lot more real. So, that's not being a Debbie Downer. You're being real. Richard, we don't need to mirror that school down south, Detroit. Yeah. Well, in certain regards, if you're talking about just getting wide receiver talent, being in the top 5 where Ohio State has been annually in recruiting, Richard, I would say, yes, they do need to mirror that school. Not everything that they're doing. I think Michigan and their fans and their alum and their football players, I think they should all brush their teeth. And I think that they should all, things that you do and don't be obsessed, and don't be a bunch of Philistines and ne'er-do-wells like Ohio State. I mean, there's a lot of things that you don't want to be like Ohio State. You don't want to be, addicted to alcohol and drugs, everything in limitations. Like most of the ne'er-do-wells that follow or that go to Ohio State. You don't want to be that. But you do want to recruit like them. Maybe not exactly like them, but no, they do want to mirror Ohio State in terms of being top 5 annually in recruiting. They got a lot of that going on. So, Detroit coming back, talking about, let's take a look at that championship. He's pointing to the championship. All right, Vince, I ask and I have received 136 days. Let's see, Vince. Let's put together the Vince countdown to kickoff. 136 days. Put a couple exclamation points on it. Let's see. You want it on the video, but how about this one, Vince? Let's go. Countdown to kickoff. This is the one I had up, the banner that I really liked. That's still in there. Back-to-back Big Ten champs. That one's not too bad. But, Vince, I see where you're coming from. I like it. All right. Let's look and see what some others are saying. Old Montreal. If we're being frank, OSU has a lot more swag than Michigan. I'll be frank, Montreal. I don't agree with that. I think if you're talking about in the 21st century, yes, I would agree with that. But as we sit here right now, today, in the present, and talk about this upcoming season, Michigan, they don't take a back seat and swag to anybody in college football. Michigan is positioned really well with their quarterback, with their 2 outstanding running backs, with their, super abundance of offensive linemen. It's a tight end position that looks like it's rolling now. And yeah, I'll put, Roman Wilson and Kojo and, the wide receivers that they have. I think it's more than serviceable. I think Michigan's offense is pretty explosive. And with a quarterback that's got a year under his belt and can run like Lamar Jackson and, throw the ball like Patrick Mahomes, and I feel pretty good about the swag. Michigan's got more swag at quarterback than Ohio State. Ohio State's got swag at wide receiver. And you know what? You need 2 components there. You need somebody to get him the ball, and then you need to catch it. Marvin Harrison Jr. can run a 4.25, and he can, work till the sun comes up, till it goes down. But if McCord can't get him the ball, it's not going to work out there for Ohio State. And if they can't toughen up down in the trenches against Michigan, because Michigan's coming, and what they have shown the last 2 years is that they are tougher and that their brand of football, which they practice every day and they deploy throughout the season, is that Ohio State hasn't been able to handle it. Ohio State is playing like most of the other teams in the country, and Michigan is bringing their hard hat and lunch pail and also a sledgehammer, and they're coming in and they're saying, let's go. They've got their whips, they've got their chains, and the Buckeyes are coming in with their swag, and they're getting smacked upside the head. So, Montreal, I don't agree with your swag. Montreal says he'll take JJ over any quarterback in the country. That a boy, Montreal. That's some swag. That is a swag. Both are legacy swag teams, if we're being really honest. Legacy swag. I like it. Well, let's I like the feedback too. We've got the blue and white spring practice to talk about from Penn State. Yeah, and we are talking about practice. They just played this last week, and I watched them, and it was a quick game. It wasn't all that exciting of a game, but let's put up the most exciting part of the Penn State blue and white game. There's old number 10. You're familiar with him, Nick Singleton. He's one of the things that a Penn State really has going for him. I'm sorry, that's 13. That's Katron Allen. They've got two good backs, really good backs. Not as good as Michigan's backs, which we will get to coming up, I don't think, in a moment. But Katron Allen is really good, number 13, and he just ran for a first down there. And the quarterback you have is Aller. And he's a big kid, 6'5", really could stand in there. And he's got a good arm, but he did not look all that great in this game. Right here, he's dancing around, misses his running back for a walk-in touchdown. You got to be able to make that throw. That's a tough throw, moving around in the pocket, shifting your shoulders, going through all your reads, and then seeing your running back, and then the ball sails over his head. You got to make that play. Drew Aller knows that when he looks back at the film, he's going to be kicking himself. But look at it. Here he is. Nice. Ooh, little pump fake. Now he's going to run. Those are tough passes to make. Maybe a little bit too much pace on it, which brings up a second down. And now we're going to see him. Can he run? Not as much as they got a backup quarterback, who I'll get to in a moment. But here he is. The quarterbacks aren't live. So, he's running ahead a little bit. And, he was a QB. He was a QB, that backup QB to Clifford last year. And we saw him a little bit. We even saw him in the Michigan game for a, hot minute or two, hot series or two. But, he was, as we say, highly rated. He was. Penn State's offensive line, they don't lose a lot of guys, and they didn't have their left tackle, who's their best NFL prospect in this game. But the offensive line was, watching this game, that's one of the things that stood out. It's like, these guys suck. They didn't have a very good game. Let's just put it that way, saying they suck. Well, here's the highlight of the game. There's your highlight. Number 5, Amari Evans. You'll want to remember his name. Is it the Gritty? Giddy? I probably should have said, since I don't know exactly, and everybody does that. And Gritty. But let's see. This is a nice throw. He looks right. Looks over there again, right. That's what, his third option, wide open. He lays it right in there. That's nice. That's Penn State football. And there's your highlight from the game. I took some notes as I was watching it, and why don't I put those notes up on the screen? There's Evans again. So your two sophomore running backs, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, that's a nice 1-2 punch that Penn State. They'll be looking at Michigan and the success that the Wolverines have had. They'll say, hey, maybe we should play it like Michigan. Michigan's got two outstanding backs and run the ball a lot. I think that's what they are going to do. Now, their offensive line, the guys that they have missing and coming back there, they've got a long way to go to be like Michigan's offensive line. But they've got two running backs. The quarterback, Aller, the redshirt freshman, is at least worth mentioning, Bo Pribula. Pribula wears number 9, and if you put him side by side with Trace McSorley, the former signal caller there in Happy Valley, I don't think you could, tell them apart. They are built the same. They're wearing the number 9, and Pribula was running around a lot like McSorley back in the day. So it's something to mention. Also, the offensive line, it's at least a question mark. They were missing some guys, but it didn't perform well in the spring game watching it. Anybody could see that. That's not being a hater or anything else. That's just, you say it's a fact. That was an observation, I think, that everybody would agree with. Even Matt Millen, the former Nittany Lion, at the end of the game said, the real uneven performance from the offensive line. They got to get a lot better. They couldn't block anybody today. So if Millen's saying it, then, you should probably take that to the bank. If he's saying something poor about his team, that he was basically, cheering for the whole day. That's something. And wide receiver, I would think that the transfer portal would be hot. If you were a wide receiver that wanted to get in the mix immediately, I would go to Happy Valley. Evans, number 5, caught that touchdown, but they don't have much else there when you're talking about Penn State. So coming up, we'll get to that FPI and we'll get to some more of your feedback. I thought it was interesting on the Den on the Maize and Blue review. Somebody was watching the Big Ten Network and they took a screenshot of this. And we already mentioned Nicholas Singleton, number 10, the sophomore running back, and his running mate, the other sophomore, Katron Allen. 2 really good backs. And they put the numbers that both of these guys produced last year, and they had a hell of a year. Singleton was named the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. All really nice points. But then the intern, probably from Happy Valley, decided, hey, what do you think of this headline? Best running back tandem in the nation? What? No. Now, all of this was fine. How about really good running back tandem? One of the best running back tandems in the nation. Best running back tandem in the nation with a question mark? Answer is no. That is not the case. Let's look back to last year against Michigan in a game that the Wolverines won 41-17. Here's Mr. Singleton. He had 6 carries for 19 yards. And here's Mr. Allen. He had 6 carries as well, 16 yards. What's that? 35 yards between the two of them? Clifford had that one like 50-yard run. He ended up having 74 yards. And they had a backup late, pick up 6 yards. But when you're talking about a best duo in the nation, let's take a look at how they did against top competition. And they looked good against Utah in the Rose Bowl. But against Michigan, how did Michigan's backs do? Donovan Edwards had 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. Corum had 28 carries for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. McCarthy ran for 57 yards. Stokes did better than either of Singleton and Allen. So don't say stupid things when you're talking about your conference. And Michigan on the other side ran up one side and down the other for Penn State. And this is the thing, you think about 2 years ago, Michigan won 21-17. That was in Happy Valley. Hassan Haskins had 156 yards in that game. And last year, they tuned him up for 418 yards, 7.6 per carry. Penn State heading into that game, I was looking at it. Michigan had a lot of gaudy numbers themselves. And I said, hey, after the Penn State game, because they have a lot of gaudy numbers, I'm going to start using, these big time numbers, because Penn State, they were giving up fewer than 80 yards rushing per game heading into the matchup last year, where Michigan ran for over 400 yards on them. And oh yeah, Michigan's defense gave up 3 points, just that field goal for the first drive for the Nittany Lions. So that intern, a little scolding for the intern, putting up best duo in the country. No, the best duo in the country is the team that smeared them last year at the Big House. Remember that. Like, come on. All right, Penn State's schedule. Is it easy? West Virginia, hey, that's a nice opponent. Well, West Virginia coming in. Delaware, at Illinois. Let's see, where's the other non-conference? UMass. So you get UMass, Delaware, and give them credit. They're playing a Power 5 school here in West Virginia. I like the non-conference slate. Where are the losses? At Illinois, maybe. At Ohio State, likely. At Maryland, another maybe. And then, they'll be pointing to this one. Michigan, November 11th. This is late in the year for Penn State. Look at that. November 11th. This is Michigan. Yeah, there it is. Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. Michigan has at the end. And there it is, late in the season against the Nittany Lions. Michigan has Penn State and Ohio State in their last three, though I'm expecting it to come down to, this is an easy thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyways. I'm expecting this year's Michigan football season to come down to the last 3 weeks of the season. Michigan plays at Penn State, at Maryland, and Ohio State. Those 3 games, those are their toughest 3 games of the year. They're also the final 3 games of the regular season for Michigan. And there it is with Penn State. But can they beat Penn State? They sure can. But based on the history of this matchup, for a while it was like home field was really big. Go to Happy Valley, lose. Go to Michigan, lose. And then, it was a little bit flipped around there. But, Penn State had a good year last year, except when they played Michigan and Ohio State. All their other games, they were really good, except against Michigan and Ohio State. So that's going to be, they're not sitting around, I don't think, sticking their chest out. They're saying, look, we got to beat Michigan and Ohio State. They do that, then we're going to be everywhere we want to be. For Michigan, for about 6 years, they were singing the same tune except Ohio State. Michigan's doing pretty good, really good, except they can't beat Ohio State. Penn State's tune's close to that. They can't beat Ohio State, but they can't beat Michigan either. So that's it. That's what I think when it comes down to OSU. Now, we'll take some of your feedback. We'll get back to it because it is rolling in. Yeah, that's right. Michigan does have a last top 3. I'm going to get over here. Gus and Joel call what? 70% of our games last season. Might as well keep that rolling. Yeah, this is from Dooney Don. I like those 2 guys doing the game. Richard with Jenny Taft on the sideline. I like the trio. Penn State needs to modernize their quarterback play. Well, I don't know. Drew Aller was as highly thought of as anybody out there. And that backup is looks like he's a dual threat. So I think they're looking pretty good at that position. Richard, what Penn State needs to do is they got to beat Michigan and Ohio State. They do that, then they're doing all right. Michigan's D-line typically punishes Penn State's quarterbacks. Hope we can do that again. Here's old Andres. It's always good to see Andres in the chat. He's saying people complain about U of M, but PSU wins all their out-of-conference games, but get popped by Michigan and OSU every year. Great isn't always greener. Mark, after no offense spring game with a touted number 1 backfield of Aller, Singleton, and Aller, PSU now claims number 1 defense in the nation. Preseason super hype. Is that what they were claiming? I didn't actually notice that. Let's see. All right. Let's get a few more in here. Here's some Frames Janklin. I get it. We'll find a way to lose again. The funny thing about James Franklin is it was just 2 years ago that, you do, I haven't done it yet this year, but I will at some point, you rank the coaches in the Big Ten. Trevor McHugh from the Maize and Blue Review just last week did that. But 2 years ago when I did it, I put James Franklin in front of Jim Harbaugh. They were a 500, and Franklin had beat Ohio State. Harbaugh had not. So I put Franklin in front. Michigan fans are like, you're an idiot. And I think they were right, because now these last 2 years, head-to-head, it's sitting there with Harbaugh with 5 and Franklin with 3 and 2 Big Ten championships for Jim Harbaugh. I don't know how many times we could say it. These last 2 years have really helped Michigan's cause out in a lot of arguments and in a lot of things. That's what beating Ohio State and winning the Big Ten and going to the college football playoff will do for you. More than one time. It's amazing what it'll do for you. Just ask Michigan Just ask Michigan fans. Let's do it. It's going to be fun. Okay. This is not fun if you're a Michigan fan. It's looking at stuff that ESPN came out with today. They came out with their football percentage index. Now, what is that? Well, in the preseason, they use data points that are just made up of previous seasons. They have a formula of returning starters. They look at past performance, recruiting rankings, and coaching tenure. Now, it's pretty easy when you're looking at returning starters to figure that out. Past performance is what it is. Like I said, Michigan is Harbaugh is 5-3 head to head against Franklin. He is what against Ryan Day? Day's in his 5th year, and Harbaugh is heading into his 9th year. But head to head, those guys, it's 2 for 2 for Day. Pretty easy because it's 4 years for first base. So there you go when you're talking about coaching tenure. I don't know the exact formula that they have cooked up when it comes down to that, because first base had a really good first 2 years. And then even last year, even though he lost to Michigan, he ended up getting to the college football playoff. So, the data points or the formula might look good for first base, but when it's head to head with Harbaugh, can you put Harbaugh in front? It's at least even, Steven, from what I see, if I'm looking at just the 4 years and I'm putting it together. I don't know what the formula exactly are saying. So, but I put all that out there, but then to look at the rankings that ESPN came out with. Now, here's their football power index that they just came out with today. Number 1, Ohio State is their number 1 team in the country, followed by Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Texas, who Michigan's playing next year at the Big House. And then Michigan comes in at 6. So that's the FPI preseason, and we just went through the formula. Now, considering these teams and their past performance and how they've did, Georgia seems to me like they would be number 1 in that all those indicators that I just went through. Recruiting rankings, they do good. Kirby Smart, good head coach. They just won 2 national championships. Past performance, returning starters, maybe they drop some there. Certainly their quarterback. When you go through past performance, they use the last 4 years, but they use the previous season that counts as 2. So the last 4 years, it works out really good with Ryan Day and Harbaugh because they've gone head to head, and yet Harbaugh is going to win that one because last year's is worth 2. So what I'm saying, when you look at that, is, boy, Michigan gets covered by OSU with recruiting rankings. Remember, Michigan finished whatever it was, 17-18 last year, and Ohio State's up in the top 5, top 3 annually. So that's what has Michigan not as high as OSU. Now, is this locker room material? Texas being higher than Michigan seems weird. And so does LSU. But when you get to those recruiting rankings again, I think that's what it's going to come down to. And I don't know, does Chip Kelly get to carry over his Notre Dame record? Probably. Alabama, when it comes to recruiting and everything, Alabama, it's not a surprise that they're going to be up towards the top in anything. Here was the one surprise. The Ohio State being number 1, clearly way over Michigan, is weird to me when I look at their data points. But then ESPN Analytics came up with their best chance at making the college football playoff. And they have Ohio State with an 82% chance. It's a really good chance. I'd go all in with that. Georgia, 63% chance. Bama, 62. I don't know. Texas, 34. Michigan at 5 with just a 26% chance. Now, Ohio State's got an 82% chance. Michigan with a 26% chance. Michigan plays Ohio State at home, and Ohio State is replacing its quarterback. I think the FPI, if anything, I don't want to say, well, that just goes to show you that the FBI is full of crap. That's a bad formula. But when I look at formulas and I look at Michigan and, you're thinking about what both teams have coming into the season, you look at the schedule, you look at the players that, the teams have coming back. And for Michigan to have their returning quarterback, who was really good last year, and for Ohio State to have a question mark, even if he's highly rated at quarterback. And looking at the way Michigan tuned up Ohio State the last 2 years, it's not like these games were like, a call here or a bounce there, and Ohio State wins that game last year. That actually wasn't the case. Michigan dominated Ohio State. Ohio State scored 3 points in the second half at home with a quarterback that's going to be picked 1 or 2 in the draft. McCord may be fine, but do I think he's going to be, is he going to be walking in? And I think he's going to be like, a top 5 pick. I don't think that. It's more likely that, that it's going to take him a little bit. So if that feels a little flawed to me, and then where the game's being played. And then if you say, well, it's just a one-time thing, it's not been a one-time thing. It's now been a 2-year thing. And the game's playing in Ann Arbor. So it feels to me like FPI maybe should value that returning quarterback position and maybe, turn some screws on there, because it's just the numbers seem way too much. Or maybe they're putting too much into recruiting. I don't know. Maybe this is just me looking at Michigan having a 26% chance, which sounds fine to me, except that Ohio State has an 82% chance. If Ohio State had a 64% chance and Michigan had like a 50% chance, I would be thinking, all right, it's a formula, FPI, whatever, numbers. You put them in, it's only what the numbers that you're putting in end up spitting out. But it's also one of these things. I like analytics and I like looking at the numbers, except when I start thinking about it and I use, the eye test, or just along with the eye test about, hey, Michigan's got their quarterback proven, this guy unproven. Now, sure, he could be great, but we're just giving Ohio State an 82% chance and Michigan way down there because of the quarterbacks. Just based on that, I don't like it. But the way Michigan plays football and Ohio State has not been able to match the physicality out on the field, there's no formula for that. That's where the formula misses a little bit. But if you're a Michigan fan, do you say Ohio State hates us? I'm sorry, ESPN hates us? You could say, I say that you can see where the FBI is faulty. That they need to brush up the numbers that they're plugging into the computer. They need to weight the returning quarterback a little bit more than just looking at. They probably look at McCord and say, hey, he was a 5-star. This guy's going to be the greatest thing ever. So they don't lose whatever points that they're going to have on their little FPI there. And, sure, Michigan gets twice the bonus points for beating Ohio State last year, but they're still that far behind. It's not working in my brain. Trying to be objective about it. I don't see the FPI with an 82% chance with Michigan with 26 being something that I'm going to believe in so much. This is to win the national championship, or this is just heading into the season. The ranking, they have Ohio State number 1. Yeah, I'm not putting Michigan down at 6 in any way that it's done. People are always like, I hate preseason polls. Well, that's fine. But considering the talent that Georgia has and that they just won it, I have a hard time not putting them at 1. But I have a hard time with Michigan having dominated Ohio State the last 2 years. Michigan having their quarterback coming back, Ohio State not having a returning quarterback, and the game being played in Ann Arbor. We're putting Ohio State in front of Michigan for anything coming up this year, heading into the season. You tell me after the Notre Dame game, Ohio State looks great. McCord looks like he's in tune with his wide receivers. They look like they're going great guns. And, Michigan's, I don't know, they struggle a little bit against whoever. East Carolina, I don't know. You want to tell me after a couple games and then Notre Dame, Ohio State's got a road trip, a road win against Notre Dame, and you want to tell me that, the FPI then has Ohio? Okay. I'm listening then, but I'm not listening to that right now. FPI, flawed. Based on my eye test and how I see it. And I'm objective. If there's some things in there, it's not always just, even though I've got, Michigan stuff all over. I'm going to, if I thought that, Michigan, I'm like, oh, yeah, those numbers make sense to me. They don't. Well, let's see. Maybe they make sense to the people. And there's a lot smarter people out there, and they're people that more, I don't know if I'm right side or left side, but whatever the math people and analytic people, there are people that are better absorbing the numbers and sorting them out than me. I know that. It's not that I'm bad, but I don't think I'm great. But I think some of you might be better. So let's see if some people have some opinions on FPI and Michigan. I agree, keeping both running backs. Mark, Big Ten, starting to backload the schedule. Yeah, having Maryland and Penn State in there, I hear what you're saying. Penn State have upbeat bloggers. Notre Dame running back coach claiming Notre Dame has the best backfield. Okay. Richard, last year Franklin admitted he didn't have the personnel to play Ohio State and Michigan. Yeah, his team was also throwing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the tunnel with a matchstick for things that were going on. They started all of that. Blank says FBI had Michigan unranked 2 years ago. Andre says ESPN doesn't know jack. The only thing they got right last year was Michigan and Ohio State both making the playoffs. Texas being in front of Michigan, that seemed a little odd to me, considering the Texas beat Washington in their bowl game. Day has one win over Michigan as head coach. Go back and check that, OT. I think he's been there for 4 years. The first year that he came in was Meyer was there, and then he got suspended, and he took over for 3 years. I think he's been there for 4 years. I think this is going to be his 5th year, which makes him 2-2, but I could be wrong. It happens all the time. Do they vote as a committee? It's not a vote. It's a totally formula. JP says ESPN hates us. They have a contract with the SEC as well, so everything will be Georgia, Bama, and then toss in OSU once in a while. They never will give Michigan respect we now deserve. This is a good point when you're looking at the talking heads and opinions of, I say talking heads, I was going to say broadcasters, which is kind of the same thing. While you listen to ESPN radio, they know that, that they are going, even if they say that they're going to try to be honest about everything, it's going to be hard if you're a Michigan fan to not think that ESPN is going to be biased towards the SEC. It's a good point. But FPI is a formula. There's nothing with the opinion there, and it's been going on for a while. So the FPI hates Michigan. I think that it's a recruiting, that the fault is in there with the recruiting, but you may be a recruiting person and say, look, recruiting is what it's all about. So it's a huge component. I think putting that returning starting quarterback, let's see if I could bump up what the formula would look like, if they put that variable in there. Mark is go on, Mark. Let's see some of the formula. 5-star backup quarterback worth a lot with 2 All-American wide receivers in an elite backfield. Yeah. Like, to me, when I looked at the formula that they use, and it's nothing about broadcasters, it is black and white formula. This is what they say is their football percentage index. It says the components are entirely data from the previous seasons. And then here's the data. Returning starters. Past performance. We already went over that. Michigan is better than Ohio State because they get 2 for the price of 1 for last year, and then there's the 3 previous season. Recruiting rankings. All right. Coaching tenure. Michigan, to me, has all of these covered except the recruiting rankings. And so that's where you get 5 stars galore, like Mark is talking about. Andre's with the point of the day. He wants what the FBI is smoking. Me too. Let's do it. What you do, you just get in there, you're like, all right. Ohio State. Notre Dame. I don't know. That's not. All right. We'll read some more feedback. OSU, or if you say it fast, maybe if you've been drinking, OSU should have lost by 29 last year, and they got a mercy whistle at the end to keep the score a 22-point deficit. Even the officials took pity on OSU. Mark saying that if OSU had Moody wins the Natty. A shank away from the Natty last year, that's why. And that helped them too. I don't know. Playing close to Georgia, losing to TCU, maybe that pushed that FPI up there a little bit more. The main analyst, not spelled like that, ESPN promotes, is Paul Feinbaum, Alabama homer who hates Michigan and Harbaugh. Well, that's true. I mean, there's Paul Feinbaum he's an SEC guy, and it's easy to root for and go against the Big Ten and rile everybody up when you're, an SEC guy. I mean, it's easily done. What happened last year? SEC. What happened the year before? SEC. I'm not making any. You're right. Paul Feinbaum. Everybody knows how he rolls. If Michigan had players they win the national championship last year. Wait, let me walk through that one sometimes. This one is from Blank Name, says, if Michigan had players they didn't have, they win the national championship last year. You're talking about Blake Corum, if they had Blake Corum. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We can play that game. I think the thing about Michigan is they've got great depth, which was able to get them all the way through there anyways. And they beat Ohio State with a backup running back. So, I don't know. That'd be a nice poll. I don't know, for Michigan fans. It'd be a good poll for people that, I don't know, like the college football fans. How could you get them to answer it honestly? Do you think Michigan would have beat TCU? You're saying win the national championship. I don't think that Michigan would have won the national championship if Blake Corum didn't get hurt against Illinois. Do I think that they would have beat TCU? I'm going to have to say no. And so, I mean, there was still the Philly special. There still were the 2 pick sixes. Maybe Corum is in there. Probably Corum. They're not giving it to Khalil Mullings. Although Khalil Mullings was the big back. You're saying, oh, for sure, Blake Corum. I don't know. And Blake Corum wasn't tackling Quentin Johnston on that 76-yard touchdown. So I'm not so sure that Michigan wins against TCU if they have, Corum. Sounds good. We can't really do anything. And then won it all. ESPN clearly weighs recruiting rankings, which is crazy because they have the worst recruiting service. Well, to their credit, they're not just using their own recruiting rankings. I looked. They definitely have rivals, and then they use, I don't know. I can't say which of the other 2 because I'm not 100% sure. Whatever the other 2 are, I don't know. They use, I think, Phil Steele, which actually Phil Steele uses about 6 recruiting services and then makes a composite. I don't know. We're all a little bit, we sit around talking about recruiting. Like, no, it depends. Like some people are just like, well, he was a 5-star. Actually, he wasn't, a 5-star, different guys. So I don't know, Richard. Maybe they need to send me to the doctor. JP, follow the money, and whom ESPN has contracts with. Yeah. Well, the one thing that I have found out is that fans, whoever's covering the team, they have it in for anybody. Like, unless you come out and pledge your allegiance to the school and then follow it up. If you're a writer, if you're a broadcaster, always preaching the maize and blue. If not, you become a hater. You become somebody that can't be trusted. You become somebody that, is anti-Michigan, anti-Big Ten. I mean, it doesn't matter. There's a lot. This is the part. There's a lot of folks that are in the media that love the game, want to promote the game, want to analyze and then give their opinions. But if their opinion isn't something that you like, then automatically you're going to include them like, nah, he went to Colorado. He doesn't know what he's talking. He likes Ohio State. I mean, it's a tough spot. It's a tough spot. Meanwhile, I mean, you're a sports fan, you grow up, you have your allegiances. It is hard to put them aside and then try to look at things objectively. And I don't even know, do you really want objectivity? The people that I think that are most objective, I would say their name, and you'd say, oh, are you kidding? That guy's the biggest hoe. I mean, who would I say? I would say Chris Fowler from ESPN. Now, he does play-by-play. He doesn't pick games. He'll talk about the games, and I guess I don't know Chris Fowler's background. Maybe he went to Florida or something. So and he's on ESPN. So automatically people say, oh, are you kidding me? This guy's totally slanted towards the SEC. He's in Nick Saban's back pocket. He seems to be pretty objective. Now, if it wasn't for, it's not a hot take, but nobody's going to like it. If it wasn't for 2 instances, I think Kirk Herbstreit could be put into the category of a unbiased promoter of the game who calls it like he sees it. Unfortunately for Kirk, he went to Ohio State, and then when Michigan was going after Les Miles, sabotaged the coaching search. And then unfortunately for Herbstreit, when it was the pandemic, and he was talking about Michigan, and he was talking about Ohio State, he came up with the old white flag comment. Well, Michigan's, been looking for any reason that they can to wave the white flag. And then it was like, all right, you fool me once, shame on me, twice. So you can't, even though I'll say it, I like Kirk Herbstreit, as a broadcaster, and I think most of the time, except he slips up when it comes to Michigan. And you could say, hey, that's why I like Desmond Howard. Desmond Howard doesn't pull any punches. He's a total homer towards Michigan, always picks Michigan, always rails against Michigan State. Any chance he gets, he'll do that same thing against Ohio State. I mean, he's a complete and total homer. But you know what you're getting with him. I mean, he's not trying to go out there. It's not like, Desmond's, acting like he's, impartial or anything. I mean, that's the thing. Last bit of feedback. Let's see. There's a few new people jumping in. Let's get their thoughts in here. CEO. Penn State is going to win this year. Yeah, I think they're going to have a good year. I'm with you on that. One of my favorites, Gary. It will snow in Michigan on the for the Ohio State game, and we'll see how that quarterback will do. Yeah, well, Gary, if we could ask for snow that day right now on November the 25th of 2023, I would like it to snow in Ann Arbor. I think that would be a distinct advantage for Michigan. Certainly would be mentally. I think the fans would all feel it. I mean, if the snow just in 21. I remember being down there early in the morning, then the golf course, and then what's that done at around right around 11 o'clock. And we knew the snow was coming. But I mean, it almost started a little bit before the game, and then as the game, I mean, it was Mother Nature played that one out perfectly for Michigan 2 years ago. That was nice. That was nice. Let's see if anybody wants to jump in on my unbiased broadcasters. That's always fun. Feinbaum's making sense now. OSU had the best FPI and SP plus all year long until Georgia took it. That's a good point, Mark. The old SP plus. I like that one. I don't know, FPI, I hadn't put as much thought until today, but I do like the old SP plus. That puts recruiting rankings in there as well. Here's Jay. Day's record against Michigan is 1-2. Did I give Day an extra dub? That's my bad. Something should happen to me. Something. I'll have to think about it over the next 24 hours. I remember when Phil Steele said Michigan was 70th or something. Venice, every couple months, shows up. Went to Alabama. I think he's talking about Feinbaum. Well, that says a lot, doesn't it? Herbstreit is still recovering from that concussion. Penn State will be at noon. JP likes Joel Klatt. He respects his opinions and analysis of players, teams, and conferences. I like Joel Klatt myself. Mark says Desmond's never really down on OSU. And very fair as to ability, but still always goes with Michigan despite the point spread. That's fine. It's snowing in Gaylord right now. It was snowing at like 4 o'clock this morning in Michigan. Couple more here. Oh, Fowler went to Alabama. Oh. Well, then, of course that he's going to be a total homer. Of course. Klatt is going to lose his mind if Colorado shows a pulse. Oh, yeah. Yeah, where did he was doing it. It must have been late because Dion was in there. And old Gus was like, you're pretty excited. Oh, yeah, he's pretty excited. Joe Klatt was pretty excited about Colorado. I'm pretty excited about the college football season starting. And, we've got a ways to go. And if Vince, 136 days till kickoff. Every time you get in and you tell me how many days there is, I will put it up just like this. The Vince countdown to kickoff, 136 days. Now, what can I do to reprimand myself for giving Ryan Day an extra dub against Harbaugh? I'll think that over. Maybe you can come up with something and send it to me and get in tomorrow on the feedback. Jim Scarcelli will be joining us. We look forward to that. Thursday, I've got 2 days to watch the Michigan State spring game. That sounds like a lot of fun. I think I'm going in for, what would I go in for? I think I got to go get a colostomy checked. All right. That'll do it. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for watching. And we will talk with you tomorrow. Goodbye.